I thought I'd be a bit of a hypocrite today and, despite my reluctance, actually discuss a current event, a topical event, which I believe, despite its consistent recurrence in the international dialogue and media, doesn't ever really get the in-depth analysis I think it deserves. And this topic is marriage, gay marriage in particular, but I'd like to trace the history of marriage to sort of put this discussion into its proper context. Now, I'm always mildly amused and slightly disgusted to see the opponents of gay marriage defend their position, define it as a defense of traditional marriage. This is the term they usually use, and I understand the need to do so as not to, to better conceal one's religious prejudice, but such labels as traditional are wholly inaccurate and disingenuous. Regarding the history of tradition and traditional marriage, the real history of marriage dates all the way back to Neolithic times, approximately 8,000, 7,000 BCE, give or take, a millennium or so. Around this time also was when the first ritual burials were taking place, and it's no coincidence that society was simultaneously transforming from these roaming bands of hunter-gatherers to a sedentary, stable agrarian society. Now, I think you'd all be aware that one of the most necessary aspects of a burgeoning, sedentary agrarian society is the assurance of progeny, of offspring, as a source of future generations, but more immediately as a source of immediate labor. This is the best way to maintain that sort of civilization, and the best way to ensure this is to maintain that source and to maintain consistent access to a fertile companion. Hence the necessity to settle down with a select companion of sorts and to raise children together as a family unit. And this is the formation of early agrarian society, and more or less constitutes the first unofficial marriages. This is the social and necessity for such a thing to take place. So this sort of marital and family arrangement was ultimately a social necessity to achieve that sort of early agrarian society. Soon, however, once these societies had begun to form, there invariably and inevitably arose a small select group of the strongest in any of these societies, and they would form an elite monopoly over the communal surplus of goods, and with their collective military might ultimately become a new select group of what would ultimately become the new nobility, and they would have some sort of chief among them at the start of these, and these ultimately were the first dynasties won by force, and they immediately preceded the emergence of the empires like Sumer, approximately 6,000 BCE, followed by Babylon and Egypt and the like. And all of these early monarchies and dynasties which were won by force immediately after there was enough of a surplus to ensure the flourishing of agrarian society, all of these maintain a consistent principle that the best way to ensure the transference of power is through one's own line, and the best way to ensure that line is respected is to sanctify it. Thus, an arrangement, this marital arrangement, which originally emerged as a social necessity, becomes retroactively a cultural dogma and a staple of religion itself, which itself is ultimately based upon class stratification of this emerging monarchy and nobles. This is why the priestly class was always so important to early civilizations. They gave this holy justification for the oppressive form of dynastic government. So from Sumeria to medieval Europe, each individual culture in its own locale enshrined the marriage concept within its own local mythology. And it doesn't matter whether you're talking about the pharaohs in Egypt or whether you're talking about the kings of England in the Middle Ages. It's the same concept. And they applied this mythological idea of how marriage originally arose in order to ensure its success and to ensure the mystery of this emerging rigid class structure, so that generations on down the line nobody would be able to question its true origins, because it would be enshrined in religion. So ultimately the question I have for the traditionalists is, why don't you support this form of marriage? Why don't you support this form of society? The man-woman dichotomy was just one aspect of the ancient reasons for marriage. Why not the peasant-king dichotomy, which was equally essential and equally traditional? That was the original origin for the reason for marriage. So why don't you support arranged marriages in support of protecting noble bloodlines and caste societies? This is, after all, that traditional rationale for marriage, as opposed to the nascent New Age idea of marrying for love, unless, of course, you'd argue on behalf of the most ancient of all reasons for marriage, stabilizing society in the transformation from our hunter-gatherer days to the agrarian days of communal living. I hope this puts the history of marriage into perspective, and with it, the ideas of gay marriage and the entire meaning of traditional.